Hello, Telesur English presents a new episode of China Now, a Wave Media's production that showcases the culture, technology and politics of the Asian giant. In this first segment, China Currents dives into the top stories of the week, like the closure of the 9th Asian Winter Games and how Egypt is entrusting its skies to China. Let's take a look.
China Currents is a weekly news talk show from China to the world. We cover viral news about China every week and also give you the newest updates on China's cutting-edge technologies. Let's get started. Welcome to China Currents, your weekly news report on the latest developments in China. I'm Chris, and in this episode, Egypt entrusted its skies to China. China's most powerful tech giant bets on DeepSeek. The 9th Asian Winter Games closes after historic achievements in China. First, let's fly to Cairo. According to Egypt Daily News, on February 13th, Egypt received its first batch of J-10CE fighter jets from China. In the past, the Egyptian Air Force has long been a key customer of NATO fighter jets. Of the 340 fighter jets it operates, 218 are US-made F-16s and 24 are French Rafales. Acquiring Chinese fighter jets will incur substantial additional costs, such as upgrading communication and command systems, armaments, and personal training. However, Egypt still decided to shift its military procurement strategy by choosing Chinese aircraft over traditional Western suppliers, because it sees a major flaw in these multi-billion-dollar military assets purchased from Western military-industrial complex. The flaw lies in the double standards Western countries apply when dealing with Israel and other Middle Eastern nations. According to the Defense Post, due to restrictions from the US over concerns about the country's human rights violations and regional conflicts, Egypt's F-16s still carry outdated avionics and M7P missiles, a product from the 1980s with a mere 70 kilometers firing range. It's worth noting that the Israeli Air Force also operates F-16s, but these are equipped with AIM-120 missiles, which have a range of 170 kilometers. That's 100 kilometers longer than Egypt's. This disparity means that in a hypothetical aerial battle, the Egyptians would be terminated before they even started to fight. Neutering key components in military technology would not only reduce combat effectiveness of weapons, but may even directly kill soldiers operating them. Ukrainian ace pilot Alexei Mess, known by the call sign Moonfish, who passed F-16 training, which normally takes years to complete, in just 6 months. That's how good he was. However, in August 2024, he was killed by friendly fire from the Patriot air defense system. Wall Street Journal suggests that this tragedy may have been caused by the absence of the Link 16 tactical network of the Patriot missile systems delivered to Ukraine. Link 16 is a communication system used for friend or foe identification, but because Washington believes such an advanced technology is too sensitive to give out, even to its ally. This crucial component was withheld by the US in its military assistance to Ukraine, and that reluctance cost the life of Ukraine's best pilot. Egypt operates the world's second largest fleet of F-16s after Turkey. This once made Egypt a formidable force in the Middle East. However, as the US continues to support Israel, which is a regional destabilizer, and exacerbates this power imbalance through double standards, Egypt has little choice but to turn to China. And China is willing to provide Egypt with advanced missiles that can help safeguard its nation. J-10CE is equipped with PL-15 long-range air-to-air missiles capable of engaging targets up to 300 kilometers away. And this capability allows Egypt to intercept hostile aircraft and neutralize aerial threats before they reach its airspace. The J-10CE can also carry 5.6 tons of missiles or bombs and achieve speed of up to Mach 1.8. With a combat radius of 550 kilometers, it can easily cover the 400 kilometers distance between Cairo and Tel Aviv. This means that if Israel hosts an air show, Egypt's J-10CE will only need 11 minutes to bring plenty of gifts to the party. What is even more frustrating is that these intentional performance restrictions imposed by Western countries are often accompanied by unreasonably high prices. Since the 1980s, Egypt has paid over $6 billion to purchase 218 outdated F-16s. Washington used to offer Cairo an upgraded version, the F-16V, but with a hefty price tag. For instance, the US sold 66 F-16Vs to Taiwan for $8 billion, equating to $121 million per unit. In contrast, Pakistan signed a $1.4 billion deal with China in 2009 to buy 36 J-10s at a unit price of just $39 million. Egypt's French Rafale jets are even more expensive. The total cost of the 24 Rafales in service, along with another 30 yet to be delivered, amounts to $10.2 billion. And this is not the first time the Rafales has faced competition from China's J-10s. Apart from Egypt, India is another significant customer of these jets, and the main imaginary enemy is Pakistan's J-10s. Amin Mukherjee, an assistant professor in the Security Studies program at the National Institute of Advanced Studies in India, argues that the J-10s are not comparable to the Rafales, particularly due to Rafale's superior Meteor missile, which is a strong data link. However, according to BulgarianMilitary.com, attempts to equip Egyptian Rafales with the Meteor missile, which has a range exceeding 100 kilometers, have reportedly been blocked by Western powers, influenced by Israel's concern about maintaining its military superiority in the region. While Israel may have the same concerns about China's J-10 fighters and PL-15 missiles, Beijing apparently doesn't care. As Egypt Daily News concluded, by integrating Chinese aircraft, Egypt reduces its vulnerability to future arms embargoes or restrictions and improves its defense capabilities. Next up, a big move for DeepSeek. On February 16th, Chinese tech giant Tencent announced that it's testing an integration of DeepSeek into WeChat. In a current beta test, users can access DeepSeek by clicking the AI search option in the WeChat search bar. WeChat is China's largest messaging app, and this cooperation is the biggest win-win for both companies. According to Backlinko statistics, as of January 2025, DeepSeek originally had only about 30 million users, and WeChat has 1.4 billion users worldwide. The cooperation with WeChat means that DeepSeek's user base has skyrocketed 46 times overnight. For an open-source AI, this is crucial. On the one hand, every real human user can help AI optimize its own algorithm and better understand people's real needs. According to a Tencent representative, one can use the full version of the DeepSeek R1 model for free, offering a more diverse search experience. A leaked screenshot suggests that the AI can generate intelligent article summaries and provide personalized recommendations. The daily needs of 1 billion Chinese netizens will transform DeepSeek into an AI that can better serve the people. On the other hand, since DeepSeek challenged the US AI hegemony, cyber attacks against it have never stopped, resulting in users' requests often being unable to be processed due to busy servers. Tencent servers handle more than 1 billion Chinese netizens' chat, video calls, and mobile payments every day. Its server area and professional security team, which have been built for many years, are enough to provide DeepSeek with an environment immune to malicious attacks in the WeChat app. On February 14th, UBS Group released a report suggesting Tencent could be undervalued due to its AI potential. The bank included Tencent on its key recommendations list for the Asia-Pacific region, giving it a buy rating with a target price of 593 Hong Kong dollars. Moving on February 14th, the 9th Asian Winter Games concluded in Harbin, China. This year's game is the largest in history, attracting a record of 1,275 athletes from 34 countries and regions to compete. China sent a record-breaking delegation of 170 athletes, participating in 70 events, the most the country has ever fielded at Asian Winter Games. Among them, the oldest competitor is the 40-year-old curler Xu Xiaoming, while the youngest is the 16-year-old freestyle skier Chen Xuezheng. By the time the Games concluded on February 14th, Team China had racked up an impressive 85 medals, including 32 golds, securing the top spot on the medal table. China dominated speed skating, claiming 11 out of the 14 gold medals. Chinese skater Ning Zhongyan and Gao Tingyu also set new Asian records in the 1,000-meter and 100-meter events, respectively. Meanwhile, in ski mountaineering, one of the new events added for the upcoming Milan Winter Olympics, China swept all 9 medals across 3 events. But it's not just Team China making waves in winter sports. Public enthusiasm for skiing and snowboarding has surged in recent years. The 2023 to 24 winter season saw 23 million ski trips made across the country, a 16% increase from the previous year. China is now home to 719 operational ski resorts. That's the most in any country on the planet. In fact, 6 out of the 10 largest indoor ski facilities of the world are in China, in cities like Shanghai, Harbin, Guangzhou, and Chengdu. And that's all for today. Thank you for watching this episode of China Currents. If you have any thoughts and comments, please reach us at email address below. We look forward to hearing from you, and see you next time.
We have a short break now, but don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to China Now. Today, Overlap welcomes Bernardo Mendia, Secretary General of the Portugal-China Chamber of Commerce and Industry, together with Sheng Yi, Professor of International Politics at Fudan University. Let's see.
Hello, Professor Chen. Thank you very much for this opportunity. It is an honor for me to have this opportunity to dialogue with you and discuss some of the important topics for the relationship between Portugal, the European Union, and China.
Hello, Bernard. It's my great pleasure to meet you here again online and wish we can have better understandings on these things and finding out what should be the proper directions and ways to improve our bilateral triangle relationships, which is maybe the one of the most important relationships in today's world.
My feeling is positive because I think it's difficult to be worse than it was before. So it's a new start, it's a new beginning, it's a new opportunity. I think we should take it from there because everything is starting from zero. We know that both President Trump and President Xi Jinping already talked on the phone. We know that the vice from China is also attending the ceremony today. So I think it is positive. We should put our hope, but of course I would like to know what the professor has to say about this.
Yes, I think that I think we can have a cautious, optimistic for the future development of our two countries. It's quite clear, and we already see some positive signals. It seems that at least rhetorically, Trump said that he wants to have a better relationship with China, and he said that he has better understanding on these things, and he believes that if China and the United States can cooperate, we can solve a lot of things. But of course, we know that one of the maybe the only certainties from Trump's side is the uncertainty. These guys change his word very rapidly. And maybe the next moment he will have a new ideas on these bilateral relationships on some big issues. From China's side, I think we have the reason to keep a cautious optimistic because China's side make quite good preparations for Trump's second terms in White House. Our top leaders already make decisions to keep and ensure that he has a personal direct dialogue and communication channels with Trump so that these two guys, they can directly exchange their personal ideas and informations. And we know such kind of good relationship between these two top leaders will make some help to our bilateral relationships. And the second, de facto, I think that just as Bernard mentioned, actually we nearly starting from zero, which means that the Biden administrations do lots of things that will do damage to bilateral relationships even if he only have no more than 1 month in the White House, he released a lot of stupid policies. But on the other side, can say that we have nothing to lose. we nearly can begin our bilateral relationship in Trump's new terms. Nearly from white papers, we can try to push forward any possible positive progress, maybe as tiny as possible. And during the dialogue, I mean the call, Trump released a lot of lists from the fentanyls to maybe the governance of new technologies and how to ensure the new balance between our trade. Maybe it's not new questions, but at least he already showed that he has kind of willingness to push forward the cooperations. From Chinese side, you will find that one of the most important positive element to ensure the stability and the constructive development of this bilateral relationship is China already formed a quite stable guiding principles. We name it the three guiding principles to this U.S. and China relationship, including the mutual respect, peaceful coexistence, and try to ensure the joint development and the joint prosperities between our two countries and to the world. I think we have the reason to keep a very cautious but a little bit optimistic attitude to wish and to respect that in this new 4 years when Trump in the White House, we can have in certain aspect better relationships if possible.
Yes, Professor, I agree with you, and thank you for bringing in the cautious factor. Of course, we should be cautious. And what makes me optimistic, it's also the fact that Trump is very pragmatic, and he knows there is a lot of common ground as well. And there are a lot of challenges, like you just mentioned now. There are also common ground within the three principles that were mentioned. There is a lot of common ground. And because Trump is so pragmatic, and because he understands that if China and the US are aligned, he will have more to win with that, including in eventually other geographies, eventually other technological areas. He knows that if he cooperates, that US and China together can do a lot, not only for themselves, but they can also do a lot for the world as a whole. And I'm talking now about pollution, wars, and there's a lot of things that can be done and can be achieved together. And I'm so hopeful. Of course, I cannot predict the future, but I'm really hopeful that this pragmatic view and the independence of President Trump from other thoughts that we know that prevail a lot in the American administration, that this independence of thinking can prevail. I'm very hopeful, and of course, but I understand we need to. Of course, we need to be cautious, and we need to think about all the possible scenarios. But it's great that China, on the other end, is so stable on the view that they have of the international relations, on the three principles, and not only, because it brings a lot of stability. However, I still remain optimistic.
Yeah, I agree with you that Trump's pragmatic attitude and his style like a businessman, which means focusing on the real and objective interests rather than those a little bit ideological issues, will helping us to keep optimistic to the future development. But on the other side, we have to understand we have some kind of, I can name it, structural obstacles inside the United States. Trump, his personality may be focusing on this practical attitude and focusing on the real interest and the common ground between China and the United States. But his team, including some unstable hawkish peoples, which may be focusing more on these ideological or so-called traditional or classical geopolitical attitude or views toward China, which will treat China more as a kind of so-called adversaries or those challengers to U.S. hegemonies rather than a practical peer-to-peer cooperation, strategic partners. And one more thing is, I feel a little bit concerned from the obstacles or challenges that will raised from the U.S. Congress, because in his structures, the Congress and the White House, they need to check and balance with each other. And since the first term, it's more and more signals that the U.S. Congress want to have more powers or try to keep the dominant positions to deal with the Sino-U.S. strategic relationships by taking advantages of Congress power by making laws. If they passing some laws, it will make difficult for the U.S. president to passing by these laws. While at the same time, so I don't think that though Trump has more influentials and had more personal powers comparing to the first terms inside the GOP, I mean the Republican Party itself. But there are some politicians, including even the Congress spokesman Johnson and senators represented by Tom Cotton, these guys, they have quite different attitude and views on China issues comparing to Trump. So maybe in future we will have such kind of not new but quite classical scenarios on certain issues. Trump and Chinese government, our top leaders, they can dialogue and cooperate during their summit and got some agreement. United States providing some promise that he will do something constructive, cooperative to push forward these bilateral relationships. But he cannot deliver his promise. When he go back to the United States, the U.S. Congress will stop him from deliver or transfer his promise from paper to the real practice. And that will add more, not only the uncertainties to bilateral relationships, but will do damage to this bilateral trust. That's a little bit regret that in quite a long time, it's not the first time that Sino-US relationship faced such kind of challenges. Even in the 1990s, we always say that when US president go to China, they can have good dialogue, make good statement, but when United States go when the president go back to the United States, they were passing by some new laws or new policy files, which moving to the just opposite positions, the directions, which input more negative elements to these bilateral relationships. I feel, just like you mentioned, I feel also a little bit cautious, optimistic attitude on these Sino-US relationships in his second terms. But just to wait and see. Wish we can got more better signals, more better real actions in these relations in the future times.
Yes, and we've just had one signal that comes on the right direction with the TikTok announcement that they will issue an executive order to go back in this decision that was effective yesterday. So I think that's a positive one. And then going back to what you're saying, yes, I agree. There are many obstacles, but then again, also important to remind that the personality of the leaders in each circumstance are very, very important. Their own thought, to eventually to fight and change what is pure ideology, because it's not something that comes out of the rational. It's something that comes out of deep-seated emotions that do not have an adherence to the reality and to the interest of the United States, actually, or Europe, if we go to Europe and talk about Europe afterwards. And I think Trump has the conditions to do that. Just like, and I like to remind this case, because I always like to talk about this case, just like John F. Kennedy in 1963, when he made the peace speech, and he completely changed the relationship and the development of nuclear tests between in the whole world, but first with that speech between USA and Russia. And I believe that Trump has the potential to do something as powerful as this. and I'm very hopeful, of course, but I totally agree with you. Lots of challenges, and so I can only cross my fingers.
Yeah, I also need to cross my fingers. About this TikTok, I can add you more information on these things. First, yes, you can say that when Trump say that he has some ideas to resolve these problems, and after nearly less than 1 day shutdown, the TikTok reopen in the United States is kind of good positive signals on one side. But on the other side, TikTok is also a very classic case because first, Trump is the first guy who raised this threat that otherwise you will sort it out or I will ban you in the United States when he in first term in the White House. Of course, nowadays he has different ideas. He find that definitely TikTok is a good tool for him, and also you can say it's a good tool for the GOP to become more influential inside U.S. young generations. But when you're talking about more detailed, which can be delivered technical solutions for these questions, it's a lot of challenges. Actually, if you read what TikTok already done in the United States, try to fulfill the requirement raised by United States, they already fit for these so-called capital structures of the companies. Actually, there's more than 50% of capital structure come from United States, not from China. But of course, the real challenge is based on the governance structures. Red line of the TikTok is quite clear. It will never be sold, which means it will never lose its control of these companies. It will be mission impossible, which did not quite complicated to understand because according to the basic commercial rules, the founding fathers of these companies, definitely it's his own right properties. You cannot just label him with so-called national threat and coercive him to sold it out to other peoples. That's not the proper way to doing business. But whether US can go back to these common ground or common sense based business problem or principles to solve these issues. Another more tougher challenges come from the US politics because the law which providing a law basement inside the United States to ask either TikTok will be sold out or banned inside the United States already being passed. It become a law. The Trump did not have the power to suspend this law or to just cancel it. It may send some administrative files to make some balance, but it's quite complicated because the spokesman Johnson already say that he believed that their understanding Trump's decision is based on the assumption that finally TikTok will be sold to a new American buyers. And in that preconditions, maybe they could allow these companies to have more times to deal with this purchasement. But that's not the ideas come from the TikTok. And also more maybe a worse information comes from Senator Cotton. He and his colleagues already make a joint statement in the last Sunday in the United States. It say that there's no space for so-called suspend or stop deployment deliver for this law according to the text files of this law passing by the Congress and signed by Biden and the president. So that's a very tough challenges. And also, last, of course, not the least, when Trump say that I have new ideas, we want to save this TikTok, and we will have ventures talking about the capital structures. He did not make any per communication with TikTok. Even he did not make a very successful inside communications with his peoples inside the US Congress. So we still need to wait and see. But I agree with you that this TikTok can be a very good starting point or starting case to find out whether this guy has enough capacities and the willingness to input more constructive elements in this Sino and US relationship in his new terms. and we just continue. We'll keep observing the latest development of this case.
Very well. Yes, I agree. That I agree particularly with the fact that this case can be very relevant to understand what is effective power to manage the Congress and all the complexities of the decision-making process in the US. We worry about that because tariffs and protectionism are terrible for the well-being of people in general. So hopefully there will be now a new assessment. We're not in the electoral period anymore. Now is becoming effective, is power. So let's see what is going to do. Now, this has been very useful because it has shown to the local European leaders that they should manage the relationship they have with the rest of the world and not be so dependent of one country. This is about what has been claimed before in the relationship between Europe and China, actually, to manage the risk. The risking is a basic management tool. It's managing risk. You call it the risking to put a negative factor in the word, but it's actually managing the risk. You should be neutral in your economic relationship, and you should have a good relationship with all sides because. As we can see, things keep changing, and the circumstances are different every 4 or 5 years, sometimes even less than that. So we should manage the relationship. We should also consider and respect the past relationship when it's good and beneficial, especially, which is the case between Europe and China. So I think this was a wake-up call for the European leaders that they should manage more carefully the relationship, put aside the non-rational ideology, and bring aboard a more rational approach, which puts the interest of the people first. This is the most important. The politicians, they are the leaders. They have a very specific mandate, which is the well-being of the people. So if we have a good relationship with all countries, the US, China, and every country in the world, this can only bring us more benefit. It will bring us more space to talk, to discuss, and to make our interest be more easily achieved than if we keep talking about either ideology or if we keep forgetting the interest of the people. If we have more difficulty to do business with the US, of course, that the European politicians will have more room, even from the public opinion, because that's the most important for the European leaders is the public opinion. Then they will have more room to work more with China. Just recently, the US has issued some limitations to the trade of ships with some European countries, including Portugal. So you can imagine the feeling of the Portuguese people with this kind of measure is taken, by a friendly, supposedly it's a friendly country. We are all part of NATO. We are very aligned. We are allies. And then it comes like this. So, of course, these are all wake-up calls. I think it's important the politicians need to understand that they have to defend our interests more than anything, and our interest is the well-being of our people.
I think that it's very interesting questions to understand or to make some imaginations of possible scenarios between US, China, and the European Unions in Trump's second teams. I agree with you that these tariff things, the European unions need to focusing on its own interest because the rising Trump's preference of the tariff and the so-called the MAGA, Make America Great Again, or put America at the first positions, de facto speaking, it's nothing more than a new terms for the quite traditional or even classic trade protectionisms in certain aspects. And we all know that such kind of practices will not solve the problems, but I think that will be the first challenges both China and the European unions will face in the second Trump's team. This guy, he just believes in himself, and it will be difficult for him to upgrade his knowledge systems about how to doing business, how to doing international relationships in the year 2025 or in the 21st centuries. This guy's his understanding of business of this international relationship, you can find that he just lived in the world in the maybe late 18th or late 19th centuries, in which that the countries they doing business, they making their own factory and the productions in a completely different ways. I think that will be a very tough challenges because it means we need to sometimes we'll feel that we need to input too much times to persuade these guys. But these guys, it may be mission impossible to persuade. You need to conflict with them in certain ways. To such kind of conflict will become a wake up call for these guys to call back his pragmatic attitude on this, or to take a more practical attitude to deal with these complex problems. The first. And the second, I feel a little bit concerned about domestic political elements or structures inside the European Union. I mean, all those member state of the EU. Because from China's perspective, I highly agree with Bernard say that maybe the first priority of European countries, they need to put aside those irrational ideological elements aside to separate it with from the more practical, objective core interest of European countries, so that we can deal this difference or problems in practical ways. We can separate different things. Nowadays, I think that we can also keep cautious optimistic because we find some signals. Those big companies, they transfer their industry capacities from European unions to China so that they can continue their productions here. But on the other side, Bernardo, you said that you are in Brazil, it will be difficult to find those positive improvement of Brazil's. They still also focusing too much on this. In my personal opinions, is quite irrational ideological elements dominated their understanding on these bilateral and multilateral relationships between China, European Unions, and the United States. It seemed that these guys, or at least some of these European Union's top politicians, they would will to continue their unbalanced, even unilateral driven preference toward the United States and accept every requirement raised by the United States, no matter how improper it is, how sometimes ridiculous it is. They will just accept these ideas, make some very soft blame or complain about this irrational or ridiculous requirement, and then just keep their strategy and policy unchanged. That make Chinese people feel confused, sometimes feel just deep regret because it just wastes not only times but also opportunities and the trust we used to have toward the European peoples and the countries. I think that should be a problems. Do you have any ideas how to solve these issues? And or can you help us to finding out more positive signals or elements from your inside the European unions or inside countries like Portuguese, so that we can become more confident to our future relationships?
Yeah, my first advice would be to be optimistic more than an advice. is a request. Please be please be patient. Then besides some parts of the politicians, not leaders, but politicians, it's very much ideological, as you say, and it's very good for the media. So it's easy talk, you know, to not be nice to China. Then there is also, in my opinion, of course, some blindness regarding following the allies of what they consider the allies. There is some blindness in that, because the blindness should be only put on following the interest of the European people. And as to besides a little bit of patience, I think it is very important, the diplomatic work, the work of the lobbying, namely here in Brussels, because nowadays more than 50% of all the laws that are made in my own country, Portugal, they actually come from Brussels. So we don't do anything. And they don't come from the parliament, they come from the commission, which is not even elected. So and this is the internal problem we have, and we have different views about this. In my opinion, it should not be like that. It should be made by the parliament, not the commission. But what you can do to help, besides being a little bit patient, is a lot of communication, a lot of diplomacy, and a lot of lobbying. Because I believe that if we explain rationally the position of China, and if we keep talking, keep leaving the door open to find opportunities, to bring mutual benefits, to go back and try to do the investment agreement between Europe and China again, all of this. And then again, it's also about the leadership. Nowadays, we have in Europe, the president of the council is a Portuguese, Antonio Costa. He just took over this position. He has been he was an important person in a phase of huge Chinese investment in Portugal, when Portugal went through a very difficult moment. We almost bankrupt, actually, after the financial crisis of 2008. At the time, we've had the Troika, which was the European Commission, the International Monetary Fund, and the European Bank, Central Bank. They lent us 76 billion euros in exchange of a very hard program, including privatizing several companies. These companies went to international bids, and the Chinese companies were the ones that valued most our companies that were being privatized. So, and we also had other types of help from China at the time. And so Antonio Costa has experienced all of that. So he knows the benefits of a win-win relationship. On the other end, he was also the prime minister at the time that Huawei was banned, not banned, but it was restricted in Portugal, was very restricted, and still is. So at the time, probably eyeing this position in Europe, he already changed his position, but he knows, and I think he's a diplomat. So I think he's a good negotiator, and he will probably be a good bridge here in Europe, a good person for the Chinese authorities to negotiate with, and to show their arguments, their rational arguments. So I think it's that we need to keep the dialogue open, and yeah, that's what we can do right now.
Thank you, Brian. I think that your introduce make me have more reasons to feel optimistic for our future relationships, and wish that these rational politicians, they can have become more louder voice and make people have better understanding what's the real interest of European Unions, and then try best to keep control those negative elements of these irrational ideological issues, which will already damage this U.S. and China, European Union and China relationship too much.
And this was another episode of China Now, a show that opens a window to the present and future of the Asian giant. Hope you enjoyed. See you next time.